So we're going to begin by talking about the very first part of the spectrum. By the way, the in fact, I didn't talk about that. On the mnemonic it says in fact, radioactive monkey, blah, blah, blah. The in fact is IF. That's to remind you that the order you just learned them in, if you say it that way, is in increasing frequency. So you learned the smallest frequency to the largest frequency. That's what the in fact reminds. It's a reminder of which order you just remembered them in. So in fact, in increasing. Now remember, increasing means you start small and end big. So you got to be a little careful, because if I asked you which has a bigger wavelength, it would actually be the earlier one in the mnemonic. But if it's the bigger frequency, it would be later. So these are the low frequencies over here, and these are the high frequencies, whereas these are the high wavelengths, and these are the low wavelengths over here. And so let's talk about radio waves first. Radio waves are the lowest frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum. What can you tell me about their energy? High energy or low? Low energy. Radio waves, low energy. And so these have really low frequency, low energy, really large wavelengths. The wavelength of a radio wave, it varies, but in general they're pretty huge. The wavelength of a radio wave, you can kind of think of it, and oh shoot, I need to give these out. I'll give these out when we pause the video. But the radio wave, you can think of the wavelength like a football field. That light travels an entire football field as it goes through one cycle. It's a really large wavelength for radio. Now, what do we use radio for? Well, you know what we use radio for. You all know that, like, Waco is radio. By the way, Waco is 103.1 FM. What is the 103.1? Do you know what that is? It's the frequency, that's right. It's 103.1 megahertz. In other words, 103.1 million hertz. It's telling you the frequency at which that wave is broadcast. So most radio stations, FM radio stations, broadcast in the hundreds or the 90s or the 80s of megahertz, whereas AM stations broadcast in the kilohertz range, so they're not as high energy. So you know about Waco and other kinds of radio stations. What you may not know is that your mobile phone uses radio waves. It's the same kind of radio wave. Like your wireless router, TVs, ultrasounds, these are all on here. These are all kind of the low energy waves. Any kind of communications devices, satellites tend to use radio waves, CB radios, cell phones, like we said. That's where you're going to find your radio waves.